Welcome to my channel. I hope today's story will be something you truly enjoy. Please support me even more. Now, let's begin the story.
My own brother dragged me to court over the lakefront villa I bought with 8 years of my own money. Yes, my real brother. Yes, the house I paid for every single cent. One moment I was standing on the dock of my dream home on Lake Martin, Alabama, breathing in the first day it was truly mine. The next, I was staring at legal papers accusing me of stealing it from my own family. When I asked why, Ledger didn't hesitate. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "That lake house belongs to me." Dad added without blinking, "He deserves it more than you do." Mom just stood there nodding like it had been decided long before I was even born. I didn't yell. I didn't break down. I just looked at all three of them and said one sentence that changed everything for them forever. "My name is Jade Harper. I'm 34, senior product manager in Atlanta, and for 8 solid years, I saved every paycheck, skipped every vacation, and lived on rice and chicken just to make this place mine." What happened after that one sentence shattered every illusion I had about family and showed me exactly who they really were. If you've ever had the people closest to you turn against you for something you earned, hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because this story is just getting started. I grew up in a modest brick house on the east side of Montgomery, Alabama, where the air always smelled like pine and barbecue smoke, and the word fair simply didn't exist in our vocabulary. From the day my brother Ledger came home from the hospital, everything tilted in his direction. My father, Dwight, ruled the family like a small-town mayor who never lost an election, and Ledger was the only voter that mattered. Mom Helen's entire world revolved around keeping her youngest child smiling. I learned before I started kindergarten that my feelings were background noise, and my achievements were threats. At 17, I earned a full academic scholarship to Auburn University, one of the best offers the state had ever given a local kid. I ran through the front door waving the letter, heart pounding with pride. Ledger, 14, and already taller than me, grabbed it, skimmed 2 lines, rolled his eyes, and said it looked like homework. That night, he used the letter as kindling for the backyard fire pit. I watched the paper curl and blacken while he laughed. When I told Dad, his exact words were, "Jade, don't upset your brother. He's going through a phase." Mom added softly, "You'll get another copy. Let him be." I printed the replacement myself at the library the next morning. Nobody ever mentioned it again. College wasn't free even with the scholarship. Housing, books, and lab fees ate through the little I had. So I worked 3 jobs at once, 5 a.m. shifts, pouring coffee on campus, afternoon calculus tutoring sessions, and Friday to Sunday nights waiting tables at a rib joint off the interstate. I kept the cash in labeled envelopes in my dorm drawer. One Thursday, I came back from a double shift with $4,000 I'd saved over 4 months, planning to deposit it Monday. I woke up Saturday to empty envelopes. 2 weeks later, Ledger drove home in a shiny red Mustang. Dad bragged to the neighbors about surprising his son with his first set of wheels. When I asked where the money came from, Mom looked at the floor and whispered, "Family shares, Jade. Don't make a scene." I never saw a single dollar again. Graduation day arrived 4 years later. I walked across the stage summa cum laude in computer science black gown, fluttering diploma in hand, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. The seats where my family were supposed to sit stayed empty. Later that evening, Mom sent one text, a blurry photo of Ledger holding a plastic trophy at a travel soccer tournament in Atlanta with the caption, "My champion." No congratulations, no sorry, we missed it, nothing. I sat alone in my cap and gown on a campus bench and deleted the photo. That was the last time I expected anything from them. I moved to Atlanta the following week, took an entry-level coding job that paid just enough to survive, and started climbing the ladder the only way I knew how, by outworking everyone else. Promotions came fast because I never said no to a deadline, never took a sick day, never spent a bonus on anything that didn't move me forward. My apartment was 400 square feet, mattress on the floor, one saucepan, one plate. Colleagues called me the machine. I didn't correct them. 8 years passed like that. 96 months of packed lunches, no vacations, no new clothes, no concerts, no dating apps, no nothing. Every paycheck went straight into a high-yield account. I tracked every cent in a spreadsheet titled Lake House. Above my desk, I taped a single printed photo of 4-bedroom lakefront villa on Lake Martin at golden hour wide dock, stretching into calm water, wraparound porch, with Adirondack chairs facing west. That picture was my religion. By 34, I was senior product manager at a fast-growing fintech company in Midtown Atlanta. Base salary plus stock pushed me comfortably into low six figures. The spreadsheet finally showed the number I had written in pen back in 2017, $1,850,000 in liquid cash, an approved mortgage pre-qualification. I didn't tell a soul at work. I didn't post anything online. I drove south alone on a Friday afternoon, walked into the realtor's office on the lake, and put in a full-price offer on the exact house from the photograph. The seller accepted before the weekend was over. For the first time in my adult life, I let myself smile in the rearview mirror on the drive back to Atlanta. I even let myself imagine telling my parents. I pictured Dad raising an eyebrow in surprise, Mom finally saying she was proud. I thought maybe after everything they would finally see what their daughter had built with her own hands. I had no idea how wrong I was. 3 months after I signed the final closing documents, I decided it was time to share the news with the family. I had spent an entire quiet weekend at the lake house by myself, walking barefoot across the warm pine floors, opening every window to let the water breeze in, watching the sun drop behind the cypress trees from the end of my own private dock. For the first time in years, my shoulders weren't tight. I felt light. I took 7 clean photos, the double ovens in the gourmet kitchen, the floor-to-ceiling stone fireplace, the master bedroom balcony overlooking the water, the covered boat, slip the porch swing swaying gently, the outdoor fire pit still smelling of fresh cedar, and one wide golden hour shot of the entire house mirrored perfectly in the calm lake. I dropped them all into the family group chat with a short caption closed last week. My new home on Lake Martin. The read receipts popped up within seconds. Everyone was online. For 30 solid minutes, the chat was a graveyard. No reaction, no emoji, no typing bubble. Just silence. Then at 8:17 p.m., my phone pinged with a TikTok notification. Someone had tagged me in a live video. I tapped it. Ledger was sitting cross-legged on his childhood bed in Montgomery ring light, glaring eyes already glossy. The title read, "My sister stole my inheritance and left me with nothing." The viewer count was already climbing past 1 million and moving fast. He held his phone up so the screen showed my photos side by side with an old picture of our late grandparents. "Most of you know I lost my grandparents a few years ago." He started, voice trembling on cue. "They left money for both me and my sister Jade. It was supposed to be split 50-50. But tonight, she just posted these pictures of $1 million lake house she bought in secret. She used every penny that was meant for our family for me to build her dream life and didn't tell any of us. She blocked me from my own future." The live chat went berserk. Heart emojis, fire emojis, middle fingers, dollar bills flying across the screen as people tipped him. Expose her. That's theft. Cancel her. Within 40 minutes, the video hit 2 million live viewers and kept rising. I sat frozen on my couch in Atlanta, the glow of the screen burning my eyes. My name was trending in the entire state of Alabama. Strangers were calling me a monster, a gold digger, a terrible human being. Some posted my LinkedIn profile. Others found the real estate listing and started leaving 1-star Google reviews on the realtor's page. I refreshed every 10 seconds, watching the numbers climb, waiting for someone in my family to step in and shut it down. No one did. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling phone on the nightstand volume all the way up in case anyone decided to reach out privately. Nothing came through. Not even a single question mark. At 1:03 a.m. sharp, the landline rang, the old house phone only my parents still used. I knew who it was before I picked up. Dad didn't bother with hello. That lake house is Ledger's, he said, voice flat and cold like he was reading a verdict. Your grandparents always intended it for him. You knew that. You went behind everybody's back and bought it anyway. That money was never yours to spend alone. I tried to speak, but he cut me off. You have 1 week to put the deed in his name. We'll have the paperwork drawn up. You sign it or we file suit and we take everything. The choice is yours. Mom took the phone next. Her tone was softer, almost pleading, but the words were steel. Think about your brother Jade. He's devastated. Don't drag this family through the mud. Just do the right thing. I managed 3 words. My own money, Dad interrupted again. We have proof it was meant for him. You'll see soon enough. 1 week. The line went dead. I stood in my dark kitchen, phone still warm in my hand, staring out at the city lights. Down in Montgomery, my little brother was still live, still crying for the camera, still raking in sympathy and cash from millions of strangers who now hated my guts. My parents were right there with him, feeding the narrative, sharpening the knife. For 34 years I had bent, swallowed, worked myself raw, trying to earn a place at their table. In one night they made it clear there had never been a seat for me. I set the phone down and felt something inside me shift hard, final, irreversible. They weren't just unfair anymore. They were enemies wearing family faces. If they wanted war, they were about to learn exactly who they'd raised. One Friday evening, exactly 16 days after the 1 a.m. phone call, I asked my closest friend Fiona to drive with me from Atlanta to Lake Martin so I could finally spend a full night in the new house. We left the office at 6, took I-20 east, then cut south on 280, windows cracked, playlist loud to drown out the noise still ringing in my head. The drive took 2 hours door to door. When we turned onto the private gravel lane, the motion sensor floodlights snapped on and washed the whole front of the house in white. Everything looked peaceful until we rounded the final curve. Ledger was on his knees at the front door, hood up, flashlight between his teeth, working a bump key in the deadbolt like he'd watched one too many YouTube tutorials. A black duffel bag sat open beside him. Fiona killed the engine and whispered, "Tell me that's not who I think it is." Before I could answer, the Ring spotlight hit him square in the face. The loud 2-tone chime echoed across the water. Ledger whipped around, eyes huge, then scrambled to his feet and sprinted toward the tree line. He tripped over his own bag and went down hard. Mrs. Caldwell, the 72-year-old retired ER nurse next door, was already on her porch in slippers and a housecoat, phone pressed to her ear. Tallapoosa County 911. I need a deputy at 412 Cove Ridge right now. Young male, black hoodie, actively attempting to break into the lake house. He's running toward the woods, but the Ring cameras got him in 4K. 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled up in under 7 minutes, red and blue lights bouncing off the water. Deputies found Ledger halfway down the walking trail, hands up, breathing like he'd run a marathon. They walked him back in cuffs while he shouted the whole way that it was his property, and I was setting him up. The lead deputy recognized my name from the closing documents still fresh in the county system. He asked me point blank if I wanted to press charges for criminal trespass and attempted burglary. I stared at Ledger under the floodlight hoodie, half-zipped face, scratched from Branch's duffel bag now open on the porch, revealing a sleeping bag, 2/5 of cheap vodka, a pair of my spare boat keys he must have copied somehow, and a stack of printed photos of the house with mine written across every page in thick red Sharpie. Something inside me went very still. No charges tonight, I said. Just the full report, photos, and a criminal trespass warning that sticks. They kept him at the station for 4 hours, fingerprints, photos, formal citation. He was released at 2:17 a.m. with orders never to set foot on the property again or face felony charges. Dad called 17 times while we waited on the porch. I let everyone go to voicemail. The texts got worse with each missed call. You're destroying your brother? How could you do this to family? We're coming up there tomorrow. Fiona poured us coffee from the thermos, and we sat on the swing until the sky turned pink. She finally broke the silence. Jade, your family isn't just toxic, they're dangerous. I just nodded, watching the mist lift off the lake. Back in Atlanta the next afternoon, Fiona forwarded the ring footage to Nash, our friend from college who now works in corporate security. Nash called me 20 minutes later. I've seen the video. Your brother's lost it. You need a shark, not a lawyer. Gemma Torres owes me a favor from a case 2 years ago. I'm texting you her number right now. Monday morning, I walked into Gemma's office on the 23rd floor overlooking Birmingham. She was 38, tailored navy suit, no nonsense. Nash had already sent the police report and the 4K clip. Gemma watched the video once, paused on Ledger's face, then looked up. They're absolutely filing suit. But attempted burglary on top of the public smear. That's gold for us. I slid the folder Mateo had overnighted across her desk, the Harper Grandchildren Trust statements. There's more. My parents keep claiming the lakehouse money came from my grandparents. I never knew this trust existed. Gemma opened the file. Page after page of withdrawals, $280,000 over 4 years, every transfer signed by Dwight and Helen Harper as trustees, every dollar landing in Ledger's accounts, or Dad's business account, marked for LH expenses. The original trust executed in 2016 was crystal clear, equal 50-50 split between Jade Harper and Ledger Harper, upon request after age 30. I was 34. Not 1 cent had ever been offered to me. Gemma closed the file and met my eyes. They stole your inheritance, spent it on him, and now they want the house you paid for with your own money. I felt every second of the last 8 years settle into my bones. For the first time since this nightmare began, fear was gone. Only fire remained. Gemma texted me at 7:12 the next morning. Come to the office as soon as you can. Bring nothing but yourself. I walked into her 23rd floor suite in Birmingham at 8:47, carrying only a large coffee and the weight of the last month. Gemma was already at the conference table, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by color-coded folders and 2 computer screens. Mateo sat in the corner, nodding at me quietly. She didn't waste a second. Franklin Moss filed the lawsuit at 4:57 p.m. yesterday in Russell County. Quiet title action plus constructive trust. They're claiming the lake house was purchased with funds that were morally and equitably intended for Ledger. Weak, but filed. We expected it. She slid the complaint across the table. 37 pages of legal drama, complete with a sob story affidavit from Ledger and a sworn statement from Dad that the grandparents always favored the youngest grandchild. Gemma's smile was razor thin. Their entire case collapses the second we introduce the real evidence. Today, we lock it down. She dialed on speaker. Uncle Roland answered immediately. We're 10 minutes out, sweetheart. True to their word, Uncle Roland and Aunt Beatrice arrived at 9:15, carrying the same fireproof lockbox from the day before. This time, they also brought a small cardboard box sealed with decades-old tape labeled simply Jade and Ledger. Equal. Aunt Beatrice's voice shook as she set it down. Your grandma made us promise to guard this with our lives if anything ever went wrong. Inside were the original executed trust dated March 2016, 2 witness signatures, notary seal, and a separate handwritten codicil signed by both grandparents in 2018 that read, in part, we have seen favoritism creep into our son Dwight's family. Should either child be treated unequally, the secondary trustees, Roland and Beatrice Harper, are instructed to deliver the originals and enforce strict 50-50 division. No exceptions. Gemma photographed every page in high resolution, while Mateo mirrored the scans to secure cloud storage. Uncle Roland pulled out a second envelope. This is the amendment your dad tried to force in 2019. Inside was a typed document that would have redirected 100% of the trust to Ledger at age 25, and 0 to me. Both grandparents had written across it in red ink "refused. This is against our wishes," and signed beneath the refusal. Their attorney at the time had notarized the rejection on the spot. Aunt Beatrice added a thin stack of letters addressed to me in Grandma's handwriting, postmarked 2017 through 2020, all returned unopened with "refused" by Dwight Harper stamped on the envelopes. One still had the original $50,000 distribution check inside, "never cashed, now void." I read the top letter out loud, voice cracking on every word. "Dear Jade, we are so proud of how hard you work. Your first distribution is enclosed. Use it for school or your future home, whatever makes you happy. There is plenty more when you're ready. Love always, Grandma and Grandpa." I had to stop. Gemma handed me tissues without looking up from the scanner. Uncle Roland spoke softly. "After your grandparents passed, Dwight told us the money was safely invested for both kids. We believed him until Ledger started flashing cash and new trucks. Beatrice put it together last year. We were too scared to confront him directly until you called." Gemma stacked the originals neatly. "With these documents, their lawsuit is dead on arrival. The trust was never amended. Your half was never distributed. The lakehouse was bought with your post-tax earnings, clean title, no tracing issues. Add the trespass report and the defamation screenshots. And we're not just defending, we're ending them." She turned to me, eyes fierce. "Jade, they have no legal evidence." 0. "We have originals, witnesses, refused amendments, intercepted mail, and a paper trail of fraud. This ends in one hearing." Uncle Roland reached over and squeezed my hand, the first warm adult touch I could remember from family in decades. Aunt Beatrice was openly crying, whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over. For the first time since Ledger's live video blew up my life, I was not standing alone against them. I had the truth in original ink, 2 relatives who chose decency over blood loyalty, and a lawyer who was already drafting the counterclaim that would finally make them pay. I looked at Gemma and nodded once. "Then let's bury it." She grinned like a wolf. Already titled, "Abuse of Process, Malicious Prosecution, and Breach of Fiduciary Duty." Filing Monday. The morning the case was called in Russell County Circuit Court. I walked through the side entrance at 8:27 wearing the navy suit I usually reserve for closing million-dollar contracts, hair in a low knot, no jewelry, except the thin gold watch I bought myself the day I got promoted to senior product manager. My pulse was steady, almost clinical. Courtroom 3 smelled of lemon polish and old paper. Gemma placed her slim briefcase on the defense table and gave me a single calm nod. Across the aisle, Dad, Mom, and Ledger sat rigid beside Franklin Moss, whose gray suit looked slept in. Ledger kept picking at a loose thread on his sleeve. Mom's fingers worried the same tissue without ever bringing it to her eyes. Dad stared at the state seal on the wall like it owed him money. At exactly 900 a.m., the bailiff intoned, "All rise." Judge Cecilia Ortiz entered, black robe sweeping, and took the bench with zero ceremony. She had a reputation for running a courtroom like a surgical theater. No drama, no wasted motion, no tolerance for nonsense. Moss stood first. For 24 full minutes, he delivered a syrupy opening statement about sacred family bonds, the baby of the family who was promised the lakehouse, and a selfish older sister who turned her back on blood for brick and mortar. He waved Ledger's tear-stained affidavit like a battle flag and ended with the line, "This court must restore what was taken by greed." He sat. The gallery of local reporters scribbled furiously. Gemma rose without flourish. "Your Honor, the defense will prove this lawsuit is built entirely on fabrication, fraud, and bad faith. We request to present evidence in the exact chronological order the misconduct occurred." Judge Ortiz gave one short nod. "Granted. Proceed. Exhibit 1, the trespass package. Lights dimmed. The 85-inch monitor lit up with ring footage in crystal 4K. Timestamp 9:12 p.m. Ledger's face under the floodlight bump key, scraping duffel unzipping to reveal vodka bottles, and house photos covered in red, mine. Mrs. Caldwell's calm 911 call played in the background. Gemma placed the certified sheriff's report and criminal trespass citation on the bench, like laying down a royal flush. Moss objected that it was highly prejudicial. Judge Ortiz replied, "It is highly probative of motive and credibility." Overruled. Exhibit 2, the trust originals. Uncle Roland took the stand first, 70-years-old voice steady as church bells. He identified the March 2016 trust, the 2019 amendment attempt with grandparents' furious red refused, scrawled across every page, and the notarized letter rejecting the change forever. Aunt Beatrice followed, holding the stack of Grandma's returned letters and the still-attached voided $50,000 check addressed to me that I never knew existed. Moss tried to rattle them on cross. Both answered with quiet, immovable truth. Judge Ortiz's pen never stopped moving. Exhibit 3, the death blow. Gemma projected the recovered 2022 family group chat screenshots in massive font. Dad, 10:41 p.m. Once Jade closes on that lake lot, we'll pressure her to deed it straight to Ledger. He needs it more. Mom, 10:43 p.m. Exactly. She can afford to be generous. She owes him. Dad, 10:45 p.m. If she fights, we'll file. The judge will see reason. Moss shot to his feet, face purple. Objection, authentication context. Judge Ortiz's voice sliced through the room. Metadata certified by forensic examiner, chain of custody, documented context, self-explanatory. Sit down, counsel. Gemma rested the defense case. Moss called Ledger. He lasted 7 painful minutes of "I don't recall," and my parents told me it was mine. Gemma's cross was merciless. 10 seconds of his TikTok live claiming I stole his inheritance, followed immediately by the trust page proving I never received a penny. Ledger stared at the floor and had no answer. Moss yanked him down. I was the final witness. Gemma's direct examination took 11 minutes. Income sources, tax returns, mortgage documents, wire transfers, every cent accounted for. Clean, boring, airtight. Moss went for guilt on cross. Ms. Harper, couldn't you have simply given your brother the house and preserved family harmony? I looked straight at Judge Ortiz. No, sir. Handing over property I earned to reward attempted burglary, fraud, and public defamation is not harmony. It is surrender. I will not surrender. Moss tried 2 more questions. Both collapsed. He muttered no further questions and practically fell into his chair. Gemma's closing was 10 minutes of pure steel facts lined up like bullets fired one by one. Moss's closing was 8 minutes of stammering and sweat. When he finished, the silence felt radioactive. Judge Ortiz removed her glasses, cleaned them slowly with a small white cloth, then flipped to a fresh page on her legal pad. She wrote, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 9 full minutes of nothing but the scratch of her pen and the soft tick of the wall clock. Then she looked up. The gavel slammed down like a rifle shot that ended a war I had been fighting since the day I was born. Judge Cecilia Ortiz set the hammer aside with deliberate calm, folded her hands on the bench, and spoke in a voice that carried to the back row without ever rising above conversation level. This lawsuit is declared frivolous, vexatious, and wholly unsupported by law or fact. All claims asserted by plaintiffs Dwight Harper, Helen Harper, and Ledger Harper are dismissed with prejudice. Fee simple absolute title to the real property commonly known as 412 Cove Ridge Road, Lake Martin, Tallapoosa County, Alabama, is quieted forever in defendant Jade Harper alone, free of any lien cloud or equitable interest. On the defendant's counterclaim, the court finds clear and convincing evidence of malicious prosecution, abuse of process, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Judgment is entered against the three plaintiffs jointly and severally in the amount of $92,000, $92,000 in statutory sanctions and taxable court costs, plus $75,000, $75,000 in compensatory damages payable to Jade Harper. Reasonable attorney fees and litigation expenses incurred by the defendant will be determined at a separate hearing and added to the judgment. Execution may issue immediately. Court is adjourned. The last syllable still hung in the air when the first cracks appeared. Dad's head dropped until his chin hit his chest, shoulders curling inward like a man folding in on himself. Mom's tissue finally slipped from her limp fingers and drifted to the floor, a small white flag of surrender. Ledger stared at the table in front of him, as though the wood could open and swallow him whole. Franklin Moss half rose, mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land, then collapsed back into his seat. I stood up slowly, the sound of my chair rolling back the only noise in the room. My heels clicked once, twice, three times as I walked to the exact center of the aisle and turned to face them for the final time. They looked up at the same instant, three pairs of eyes that once decided my worth, now wide, with something between terror and pleading. I spoke softly, but the acoustics of the old courtroom carried every word to the rafters. You chose Ledger every single day of my 34 years. Today, I choose myself. From this second forward, we are strangers. You no longer have a daughter. You no longer have a sister. Do not call. Do not text. Do not show up at my door. We are done. Dad tried to stand. His knees betrayed him and he sat back hard. Mom reached out with one shaking hand. Fingers splayed the same gestures she used when I was small and crying. Ledger whispered Jade, in a broken voice I hadn't heard since he was 8. I didn't wait for more. I turned, walked straight down the aisle past the bar, past the bailiff who stepped aside without being asked. The heavy doors swung open and sunlight flooded in. Gemma followed half a step behind. Fiona and Nash were waiting in the corridor, eyes wet, arms already open. I kept walking until my shoes hit the top marble step outside the courthouse. Only then did I stop and breathe. The November air was cold and sharp and tasted like pine needles and absolute freedom. My lungs filled completely, painfully, gloriously, as if they had been half closed my entire life. The invisible chain that had wrapped around my ribs since childhood didn't lift. It snapped link by link and fell away into dust. Gemma rested a light hand on my shoulder. It's finished, Jade. Really finished. I looked across the quiet town square, red brick storefronts, pickup trucks, ordinary people going about an ordinary Tuesday that had no idea a lifetime of captivity had just ended 30 feet behind me. No, I said, and the word came out steady, strong, brand new. It's finally starting. 6 weeks later, the money landed $92,000 in sanctions, $75,000 in damages, plus Gemma's 6-figure fee award on top. Their names were on the sender line for the very last time. Ledger was fired the same day the Montgomery paper ran the front page headline, "Local Family Ordered to Pay, Sister $167K After Baseless Lakehouse Suit." His old TikTok tears became memes overnight this time, with the judge's ruling stamped across them. Dad and Mom listed the East Side brick house for $65,000 below appraisal. It sold in 7 days to a young couple expecting their first child. They moved into a faded 2-bedroom apartment off the Atlanta highway, where the parking lot smells of fried onions and the mailboxes are dented. I never blocked their numbers. I simply never picked up again. Some mornings I still jolt awake expecting the old tightness in my chest. Instead, I open my eyes to lake light shimmering across cedar beams. I walk barefoot to the dock with black coffee settle into the Adirondack chair I bought the week title cleared, and watch the water turn liquid gold. I am 34, debt-free, title absolute, and for the first time in my entire existence completely, fiercely, unapologetically my own. That is the only legacy I ever truly needed. 6 months later, on the first warm Saturday in May, the lake sparkled like broken glass under a cloudless sky. I stood barefoot on my dock in cut-off shorts and an old auburn t-shirt, turning ribs over glowing coals while music drifted from the outdoor speakers. Fiona was mixing margaritas at the bar cart. Nash and his fiancée argued good-naturedly over who got to flip the steaks. Gemma arrived last still, in courthouse heels, kicking them off the second she hit the planks, and announcing she was officially off the clock for the first time in 8 years. Uncle Roland and Aunt Beatrice pulled up in their old Ford pickup with 2 folding chairs and a homemade peach cobbler still warm from the oven. They hugged me like I was the child they never had, and I let them. The dock was crowded with the only family I claim, now the ones who showed up when everything burned, who never asked me to be smaller so someone else could feel bigger. Across the state, things looked different. Ledger's sales job at the Montgomery dealership lasted exactly 11 days after the judgment hit the local news. Customers recognized him from the viral clips, walked straight past him to other salesmen, and asked to speak to anyone except the crying guy from TikTok. Management let him go quietly with 2 weeks severance. Last I heard through a mutual acquaintance, he was living in a studio above a vape shop on the Atlanta highway delivering food at night. Dad and Mom sold the brick house on the east side for $58,000 less than they owed the bank to cover the judgment. The moving truck came on a rainy Thursday. Neighbors watched from porches as boxes labeled Ledger's trophies and Christmas decorations were loaded up. They now rent a 2-bedroom unit in a tired complex off Ann Street, the kind with cracked sidewalks and a pool that hasn't held water in 3 seasons. Dad took early retirement. Mom works part-time at the church thrift store. They keep the blinds drawn. I never asked for updates. People just tell me. That Saturday on the dock, the sun dropped low and painted everything gold. We ate until we couldn't move, laughed until our ribs hurt, then sprawled across cushions and Adirondack chairs watching the first stars appear. Fiona raised her glass to Jade, who built her own damn table when they refused her a seat at theirs. Everyone drank. I looked around at the circle of faces glowing in firelight, friends who drove 2 hours to hold my hand in waiting rooms, a lawyer who fought like a sister, relatives who chose truth over blood, people who celebrated my wins louder than their own. Real family isn't the people you're born to. Real family is the people who choose to stand beside you when the world tries to tear you down. I used to think success was $1,850,000 and a house on the water. Turns out success is quieter. It's waking up without dread. It's laughing so hard your sides ache. It's knowing bone deep that the people on this dock would burn the world down before they let anyone hurt me again. The coals settled into soft red embers. Someone started a slow song. Nash pulled his fiancée up to dance barefoot on the planks. Gemma kicked her feet in the water and grinned like a kid. Uncle Roland squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Your grandparents are smiling tonight." I leaned back, cold beer in hand, lake breeze in my hair, and felt the last scar finally close. I am 35 next month. I own every inch of the life I built. I owe no explanations. I carry no guilt. And every single morning when the sun rises over Lake Martin, the light comes straight through my bedroom window, lands on my face, and reminds me I made it. I'm home. I'm free. That is the ending they never saw coming.